Hi, it's Brad from TransAudio, and I'm here today with Geoff Daking and the new Mic Pre 4T. Jeff, we got a whole new unit here. You've done some hard work and redesigned this thing. I see you've got some dual concentric pots here that we didn't have before. What's going on with all that?
Well, we tried to keep the best parts of the original Mic Pre 4, which is the high current amplifier and the output transformer and the high headroom. But we've added the high pass filter, which we use in every preamp we make now, including the console. And it's a 12 dB per octave high pass filter that goes from 200 down to 10 hertz where it goes out. And that is fantastic for getting rid of room noise and trucks going by and all sorts of things that you really have no interest in a recording.
We talked about that before. We've talked about how a lot of guys chew up headroom in their DAWs and don't even know they've done that because it's subsonic information.
Sure, in an old-time studio where you had big monitors and good isolation and you were recording on 30 IPS tape, which had no low end, then you were safe. Now you record, at home with a little speaker, with no isolation, and a DAW that'll go to 10 hertz. So it's very possible to record all sorts of crap in the bottom of your recordings, which takes up a lot of energy and a lot of space in the bottom. The subsonic stuff below 20 hertz that there's no benefit from.
Yeah. So I always like the idea of this variable high pass filter on each one of these channels. You could custom tune this to be, each one could be set differently.
Sure.
So you could be using a guitar with a vocal, with the drums.
And in a funny way, you can almost use it to emulate 30 IPS tape by creating that same 40 hertz roll-off. Just do it by listening.
Just all the time. That's cool. Yeah, it's a cool thing. A lot of people talk about that they really like it.
Be useful in live sound too.
Yeah.
Room tone is the big problem. We talked about that with, we sold, 30 or 40 Mic Pre 1s to some sports league because they wanted a microphone that the referees could use it at the sideline and get rid of the giant room tone, and the high pass filter does that. And my other example of that is that what place that they really need it is in the White House briefing room where they have all kinds of low-end crap going on. Foot shuffling, air conditioning,
right.
And the room itself doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it's amazing how valuable this is. It's the one thing that makes your preamps very different than everything else.
I was just thinking it's really the most important first step in equalization. Equalization is a funny thing. You don't really want to boost things that you want to hear generally. You want to take out the things that you don't want to hear. And that's true in all equalization, but especially in the low end.
Very good point, yeah. You also put a lot of headroom in this thing, right? I mean, you put over 20 dB of headroom in here. What is it?
It's greater than plus 30.
Wow.
And so your DAW at 24 bits can't go beyond plus 20, so you'll always have 10 dB more headroom in the preamp. So there's no way the preamp is going to crap out.
That's cool. And a lot of gain too, right?
It's almost 75 dB of gain.
So you can use a really old vintage dynamic or ribbon or...
Yeah, right, 50 ohm ribbon or whatever you want. You should have plenty of gain.
That's cool. So you can use kind of any mic and sort of use it, any source. You got all the facility to deal with all kinds of different problems. It's a pretty flexible package. And then there's DIs on here too, right?
We have a DI on every channel. Bypasses the input transformer, goes directly into the preamp at about 100K.
And this has input and output transformers, right? Jensen?
Correct.
Right?
Correct, Jensen.
And why Jensen?
Well, it's a great transformer. It's made in America. They keep them available to us. It's just a very reliable device.
I've had people say they like the Jensens because it's the most linear.
Especially in the low end. Lots of old vintage European Mic Pre's and things had transformers where in the low end they were very high distortion below 100 hertz, which gives them a sound which you may or may not want. This does not have that. This is linear in the low end. It's very low distortion all the way down to about 20 hertz.
No, that's cool.
So it's a more faithful representation without being sterile.
And then you have a 20 dB pad on it. Tell me about that.
It's a 20 dB pad that faithfully replicates the normal input impedance. A lot of people will say, I don't like to use the pad, not on our preamps, but they say on a preamp because it makes my mic sound different. Well, that very well may be because especially old or any microphone that has an output transformer, it's looking to see a specific impedance, which is generally around 1500 ohms. So if your regular input is 1500 ohms and your pad input is 2500 ohms, it's going to make the mic sound different. And so we're very accurate in the pad. We're within about 10 ohms.
So you can use a pad and it won't sound different.
Yes,
That's the
correct.
idea.
That's correct.
Well, I know I've talked to some of my friends in the business, and they all say pads are a big deal because all these high gain mics, and you're trying to record a guitar amp. How do you do it without a pad? You can't do it.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
Especially if you're using like a large diaphragm condenser microphone, which has a lot of gain.
Right.
And especially if you're using an older one with an output transformer.
That's cool. And this one has XLR and TRS quarter-inch outputs?
Quarter-inch outputs, and they're both balanced and they're in parallel. So you can drive two different things at once, and it will drive a very, very low impedance.
That's cool. And then you have a whole new meter with this Mic Pre 4.
The meter in here is the same as we use in the Mic Pre 1 and the Mic Pre 2. It's a digitally controlled LED meter, which has true VU ballistics. And then in addition to that, it has a floating point peak meter on top of it, which is really useful. It goes to plus 26. So if you see that thing going over plus 20 and you're recording in digital, you may not see the VU meter. You might be, let's say you're doing a snare drum or something, the VU meter could be reading below 0, but you'll see that transient. So that's what you really have to watch in digital, because digital does not tolerate those transients
cool.
over plus 20.
And so you also have phase control, phantom power. We have a remote power supply.
Right. And I think it's very economical because I think its retail is just under $3,000, which makes it about $750 a channel. If you look at like a 500 Mic Pre, any kind of decent 500 Mic Pre is going to be $750. Then you have to buy a rack.
Yeah.
So if you want
And power supply and all that.
yeah. So if you want 1 or 4 channels of Mic Pre in a rack, this is much more economical. Save you $800.
Well, I know a lot of people that are really big on dynamics. A lot of drummers have bought Mic Pre 4s over the years.
That's true. Lots of what I call internet drummers, guys who make their living, use these. I know Dave Weckl and J.R. Robinson and a bunch of Billy Ward and a bunch of other people use these, largely for the dynamics, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. And it sounds like this is going to be a very successful piece with a lot of new options for people.
Well, we think it's really good, and I think the high-pass filter, the addition of that is really going to make a big difference. People will figure out, oh, wow, how did I get along without that before?
That's cool. Well, we really appreciate you watching, and thanks, Geoff, for coming, and we'll check in soon. This is Daking Mic Pre 4T. Take care.
Thanks for having me.